Hello and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we're concentrating on John Keats's sonnet Bright Star. I'd love for you to think with me now that this is all about the significance of the North Star, but I just want to clarify it's also a love poem, and in reality he's reflecting on his fair love, as he refers to her, Fanny Brawne, the woman he loved but was unfortunately, due to ill health and financial adversity, unable to marry. More to be said about that relationship as it's unpacked in this analysis. But for now, before I go any further, please do hit subscribe, join my tribe. That's for all things English, literary and grammatical. So let's get into it. So the form of this poem is crucial for us as we unpack exactly what it pays homage to. We can call it an English sonnet, I'm calling it a Shakespearean sonnet. Essentially it's made up of 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet at the end, and each part of each quatrain deals with another aspect of the poem's argument. So we start off with all good sonnets with the octave. That's the first 8 lines, and they focus, as you can see from what's in red, a huge amount anyway in the opening, on the admirable qualities of the star. It's bright, it's steadfast, if you like, it's remote, its splendour in being lone. So we've got this fixed, remote, passionless, dare I say, removed nature. It's removed from the mortal world of flux that we'll revisit later in the sestet of this poem. As I think of the qualities of the bright star, it echoes Sonnet 116 by Shakespeare, which refers to love as an ever-fixed mark, and that analogy of Polaris, the North Star, to every wandering bark is, well, made reference and made homage to. This is a big shout out to Shakespeare. This is it. But more importantly, the qualities of this star are unusual, hidden qualities that it would seem that our poetic voice grapples with. In the opening line, it's like, I wish I was as great as you. I wish I was as reliably steadfast as you. But by line 2, not in lone splendour hung aloft the night. So there's a kind of, well, I wouldn't want to be as removed as you are and as alone up there in the sky at night. Even though aloft and night and splendour have these majestic qualities to them, there's definitely a sense that it's not enough. The sense that the star holds back and is watching, it's later described as gazing, suggests it's got this distance that we on earth cannot have. And as we roll on to the end of line 3, we have this slightly strange image of eternal lids apart. The idea that it's watching us, always watching, the remote world far away. The simile on line 4, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite. We have maybe 4 different ways of using that simile. It's watching the world. It is nature's patient. But the idea of being sleepless eremite, it's always up. And an eremite would really have been used as a description of a religious hermit. But eremite, it rhymes with night. That's a beautiful way of using it, but it emphasises also the isolation of the star. But it's also crucial for me to bring in the etymology of this word. Eremite links to the Greek word for desert, which is eremia. And there's this sense of the isolation of the star, and it definitely alludes to something we'll come on to in a moment about what that links to with the religious imagery that is littered through portions of this poem. We've got words such as eternal, we've got eremite, we've got priest-like, and later, as you'll see in the next line after line 5, on line 6 we're shown ablution. These religious words fuel the intensity of the power of this star, and definitely make it seem more full of gravitas than we may otherwise have warranted it. So it's patient, it doesn't sleep, it's solitary, but the imagery we're about to move into of pure ablution around Earth's human shores implies to some extent that, well, humanity's polluting the Earth. It's fascinating in some respects that as we gaze onto line 7, At the close of line 7 onto line 8, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors, the enjambment at that moment in the poem pauses us as readers to view from afar what the star can see of the metaphorical mask that is the snow falling on mountains and moors. There's something majestic in the alliteration of the M sound of mountains and moors, fueling that romantic notion of nature as powerful. But more than that, the snow lands on the mountains, these isolated areas, and the moors, these boggy areas that are on the hillside or mountain. There's no denying that by the end of the octave, we get a full picture of, well, the immortality of the bright star looking on forever at what seems like quite a mixed picture of nature potentially ruined in its isolation or damaged by humanity. And so there's quite a sharp shift as we move to the volta that is line 9. And it's sharp in that the star is rejected, and that rejection is immortality found within the human condition. We shift a gear. No, yet, still, steadfast. And we're thinking, what do you mean? No marks this shift, and actually we're now thinking on a much more, dare I say, erotic reference on that means onwards of the lover. So the repetition of still has a role to play, because still before would mean not moving. But actually there's something about the flux of the human world that we're interchanging with here. Still steadfast, still unchangeable. It's not plausible that these two ideas could be bound. I think our next area of focus as we move into the sestet is to look at how much we are shown sensual images that not only force us to see the power of movement, but also force us to embrace the passion that this lover has for their bright star, that seems to be as personified and as human as the personification used in the octave of an actual star. The adjectives I'm thinking of the ripening breast, the idea of fall and swell. There's a definite sense that ripening here implies age, but the image of pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast is really saying I could spend forever lying on my lover's breast. When my fair love is thought to be Fanny Brawn herself, we're given an insight into the sensual passions that Keats may be relaying here. But there's also something fascinating about the idea that we as mortals will grow old. The references to swell and fall, and even unrest, they echo this sense of excitement, of the contrast, of change. The star is looking on the earth, but in some respects, that view doesn't change that much. Yet, as mortals, we're constantly in flux. And I think that shift is made clear to us with the almost imperative style of awake forever in a sweet unrest. That contrasts the star, which is sleepless, eternal, as I referenced earlier. Sweet unrest, well, that seems almost oxymoronic to us. Is the poetic voice happy with the inevitable change, or just as uncertain as ever? But its oxymoronic qualities only serve to fuel the passion beneath our poetic voice, and why this stands as a love poem. The repetition of ever 3 times over towards the end of this poem, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest, and so live ever. It's as if the moment, the excitement, the erotic passion of love, its moment means so much more than the bland nature of eternity and predictability. That is also echoed through the repetition of still twice in the penultimate line. We've got the mix match of what we could be saying with the word still. Still, on one level, means not moving. Yet here, still, to hear her tender breath, taken breath. It's about continuity amidst so much change? Or is it about motionlessness? Or is it actually about both? We don't need to know the answer, but we do need to accept that Keats is onto something here. He's passionately conveying that immortality doesn't offer us a huge amount of freedom as mortals. This is proved in that final couplet ever more so by that final line. And so live ever, or else swoon to death. Right, this is definitely the punchline that you're expecting, or not, maybe, if you missed it. Death here could be a pun on sexual climax, swooning to death. Logically, though, the conclusion that this poetic voice reaches at the end of their summation of Bright Star and how magnificent it is that it's so patient is that the end point for a human and its steadfastness is our death. That's the only way we can be steadfast, knowing that we will reach our mortal end. So we are, in some respects, down again to recognising that Keats is fascinated with beauty, transience, pleasure, suffering, all these things that are opposed, solitude and intimacy. If the octave is about solitude, we're definitely brought into what intimacy is by the end of the poem. If the octave is about eternity, oh my word, by the end of it we're acknowledging mortal fears. It's a love poem. Why does our poetic voice have so much to say about himself in this? My fair love's, for all the experience he has of love. There's a longing for permanence, but a desire that we live in the moment and that we enjoy the passion that comes with it. There's no contradiction in that, but it's beautifully embedded into the wider piece of Keats's work. And it's this idea that we must be passionately seeking the opportunity to see the fragility of our moment, that seeking immortality within the human condition, finding enduring passion rooted in the world of constant change is the goal. I'd love to know what you think, so please do share down below in the comments what your thoughts are.